Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to NCSL's virtual redistricting seminar. This session is called Developing a Dialogue, Public Input, and Legislative Outreach. We want this to be an interactive experience for all of you, so I briefly want to point out a couple of features of this page. To the right of the screen where you can see me, you will note tabs that say Chat and Q&A. The chat function is to allow you to interact with colleagues attending the session. If you want to ask our speakers a question, though, at any time during this hour, please use the Q&A tab. And if you see a question you like from someone that you would like to move up in the queue, you have the opportunity to upvote that question using the up arrow. I'll be posing your questions to the speakers towards the end of the hour. And if at any time you need technical help, use the help button at the bottom right of the page. So the reason we decided to have a session on public input and legislative outreach is because we've been getting a lot of questions at NCSL about what other states are doing to facilitate public input. What are the community groups that are in these districts doing to gather public input and present it to legislatures, or in the states that have commissions, commissioners? And what should states be ready for, and what can they do to encourage not just a one-way conversation between the community to the state, but to the state out to the community as well, and make it more of a dialogue rather than a presentation, if you will. So this has been complicated somewhat by the fact that COVID-19 has prevented states from going with the plans they had originally been envisioning. But I think that there's some value in hearing about what is being done at the community level, and then hearing from a state that is already soliciting public input for its redistricting plans. And we have experts from both of those to talk to you today. So we have from the community side, Fred McBride, who is the Redistricting and Voting Rights Policy Specialist at the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. And we're very grateful to have him with us. And then on the state side, we have Quinn Doe and Keith Beal, who are both with the Oklahoma legislature. Quinn is on the House side. She is the policy analyst and redistricting coordinator for the Oklahoma House. And then Keith is the redistricting director for the Oklahoma State Senate. And Keith and Quinn have been holding several hearings already, both in person and virtually, to discuss public input across the state. And so we're very excited to hear about how they decided to set up the system they set up, the decisions that they were going through in doing that, and their virtual in-person mix in the time of COVID, and any thoughts they have for states that are thinking about setting this up. So I think it's going to be a fun hour. And just to start it off, I'm going to throw it over to you, Fred, for a discussion of what the community is thinking about right now in terms of public input.
Thank you, Quinn, and thank the National Conference of State Legislatures for allowing me to present to you all today on this panel, and thank the attendees for attending and giving us your attention over the next hour. My name is Fred McBride, and I'm the Redistricting and Voting Rights Policy Specialist for the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. I'll mention briefly that it's a little bittersweet for me. Our director, Kristen Clark, has been nominated by Vice President-elect Joe Biden to serve as the civil rights lead attorney in the Department of Justice at the #4 position. So it's a little bittersweet in that I have been asked to do this panel, and I'm missing an address by her in our organization, but duty is first. And redistricting is something I've been doing now for about 22 years, and it is very passionate to me. So aside from wishing Kristen the best, I am happy to be here with you today. What I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes or so discussing is what the public has been doing to prepare for the 2020, I know we're 2021 now, redistricting cycle. It's been a very active and interesting process that's not just starting now. It started 2 to 3 years ago in preparation for this. And for someone that's been doing redistricting as long as I have, I welcomed the opportunity. I welcomed the work this early in. So what I want to do over the next course of a few minutes is talk to you about it, tell you what the community is doing, because you will be dealing with public input on the redistricting process. I'll share with you what's been going on in a lot of the states that we've worked in, and I've been everywhere, honestly, as well as the resources that are available, ideas going into the redistricting season, whenever that is, and some things that you, working in the state legislature and or being in the state legislature, may want to be concerned about. I want to start by discussing first what a unique opportunity this is to engage in redistricting. As I mentioned, I started this back in the 1990s, and I am aging myself here, but I have never seen such attention played to the drawing of maps. I also come from an academic background teaching college students about politics, and I always got excited about electoral participation. But to the extent that the public is engaged in their federal, state, and local redistricting, I have never seen it at this level. And I attribute that to the surge of interest in our elections, the November elections, and subsequent elections, the voter turnout, all of that. And the idea that people are seeing that democracy, or a tool of democracy, isn't just exercising the vote, it's paying attention to our representatives and the districts from which they come from. That is enormous now. It's being discussed in the media, it's being discussed on college campuses, and yes, town halls, albeit virtual town halls now, but town halls and communities are like, okay, no longer do you find out, for example, oh, I live in this district because you happen to be going to vote and realize that you're in a different district. I come from a generation that really got the information that way. It is a different world now. People are going online to assess this information. Plus, they have decided that they want to participate. How were these lines drawn and why were they drawn? And I honestly don't envy you where you will be in the future months coming, because you'll be getting these calls. What's going to happen to my community? Are you merging me with this district? Are we going to be in a different district? Will we be able to vote for this official? You are about to be delivered a slot of questions, or slate, I should say, of these questions. And so what I want to share with you is what this community has been doing. There is a grave interest in the issue of partisan gerrymandering that is everywhere, with specific organizations geared toward that, and the release of the census data. We don't know when this is going to come. Right now, I think the apportionment data may be February. Please don't quote me. The subsequent PL 94-171 redistricting files, maybe July, maybe August. We don't know. We know that state legislatures have to deal with scheduling and timing issues, hearings, and all of the like. But the public is aware of this as well. And as I mentioned, some 2 years ago, these conversations started. What actually was a primer, if you will, for them was the interest in the census, because so much attention was paid to a fair and accurate count that when these seminars took place before the pandemic, and I went to a number of them, I participated in a number of them, people discuss the funding implications of a fair count, but people also talked about representation. We understand the apportionment and we understand the redistricting. So that conversation, and from what I saw across this country, was as relevant as money given to communities and states for various programs, given a fair and accurate count. So there is enormous interest coming with redistricting. I do want to also point to the fact that we are in a pandemic, and these conversations now are all taking place virtually. I just got an email this morning about participation in a virtual town hall in Mississippi, the proud state from which I am from. I'm in the Maryland, DC area now, but I'm a Mississippian. Everyone is interested. Everyone is concerned about the districts and how they'll be drawn and how their communities will be represented in this process. Gone are the days where we see the map presented in a paper and we hear about a hearing a week or two later, come to the hearing to view what the legislative members have drawn, and then go back and talk about it. Those days are gone. Now we are seeing an onslaught of resources and participation in you getting what communities want, and members being asked, remember us, we are in this community, we want to stay here, we are concerned about this, we are concerned about that. So all of that is in play. Let's talk about some partnerships going on. There are state meetings with organizations like the Lawyers Committee, civil rights organizations, maybe some meetings. And when I say state meetings, I mean the overall state, not members of the state, but groups within a state deciding to get on a virtual call such as this and discuss redistricting. Those are taking place with a number of local groups, community-oriented groups, groups that are geared toward issues like civil rights, the environment, economic concerns. All of these groups now see, finally, that redistricting matters. It is important. And they've also taken the mantle to tell you that it's not just left up to members. It's not just left up to elected officials. They are telling us and you that they want to participate and they will not blindly sit by. So there are these meetings with organizations within states, nonprofit organizations such as the Lawyers Committee, and a number, ACLU, LDF, a number of groups are participating in these meetings because we kind of have the background, the expertise. I draw maps, I do statistics, and a lot of organizations have people like that who provide public education, but also can draw you a map and or assist you in drawing your own. And community activists. We have seen the First Amendment expressed so vividly over these past few months, the past year. It is not going to stop. It will accelerate and become even more pronounced. This entity has a number of resources. There are professional software programs that you can go out and spend lots of money on like what's on my very computer here, but everyday citizens don't need that. There are open source programs, and by open source, I mean go online and look up a website, and there's District R, there's Dave Redistricting, there's a number of resources available that give you an online tutorial and the actual means to draw a plan. That is out there, a statewide plan, a local plan. It is there. And communities are learning how to access that. Now, I'm happy that it's in the public's hands. It may take some work away from me, who's been drawing them professionally for years, but I welcome that someone can sit at home in front of their computer, draw a plan, call you and say, I've got a plan. How do I get this presented? I welcome, because in my opinion, that is what democracy is. Now, there's also, when people are looking at mapping and such, They're also taking on a number of other tools, like how were elections done under the past districts? So there is a great concern, as you know, with drawing districts, people have a concern about election data and just precinct alignment, all of that. I will mention the Redistricting Data Hub, which is a valuable resource tool that will have data available for all 50 states for the public to go in on. There's no special license that needs to be procured. Go on, get the data, draw a plan, use the data such that we can go to these hearings informed about these matters, informed about the districts. And people now, better than I've ever seen before, know what redistricting is, the components, the principles, what it takes to draw a fair and accurate plan, and they want to participate. That is what you're about to see, a great deal of participation. This is important. This is important, one, because for the first time in my lifetime, there will be no Section 5. So there will be great public participation in ensuring that a fair plan is drawn, because there's no stopgap measure after the legislature um, accepts a plan and makes that plan law. There's no, if you were in a covered jurisdiction, there's no, well, let's deal with the Department of Justice because we are under the pre-clearance requirement of Section 5, and now we can talk to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division about how we think this plan dilutes minority voting strength, for example. That's gone. So people see this as, we've got to get it right this time, and they will be pressuring you and your members on their particular concerns. We want to discuss a hearing schedule, which I know we don't know when the census data will be released, but it's going to be important because people want to attend that hearing. We need to discuss this volume of participation that will be coming in this redistricting cycle. And the public wants to know, what is your state's policy on public submission of plans? Do you have one? If not, why don't you? So those questions will be coming. And I think putting all this information on your websites is so important, because there are state websites I love going to. They have GIS, they've got tools, they've got a lot of stuff out there that's helpful for me, but information is key, is valuable. I'm going to close because I'm starting to talk a little too much. Some concerns that you may want to consider going forward. The census data release, this redistricting file, and your hearing schedule. I know some states may be dealing with some timing issues. And again, I know that this is going to be of grave concern for all of us because we don't know when we're going to get it. And we can't draw a plan until we get this data. The public is asking for transparency. Again, mind you what I said earlier, they're not waiting for the map to be printed on your newspapers in your states and then they just hear about it. They want to participate in this process. They want to know how to participate in it, and they want to come and tell you what they think about the plan you've drawn. Transparency is an issue. We would love for the states to update their redistricting policies and guidelines. A lot of them still have 2010, things have changed since 2010. Hopefully, websites will have this updated. And be mindful that not everyone is of the generation that does everything on a cell phone. Most of the people that I get involved with are people who are older than me, and I am pretty old. They don't use Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And I think it's important going forward, we stop thinking we can do everything online and we print some stuff. There are some people that want something in their hand and they want to read. And I welcome conversation and questions from you later. I've talked a little too much. I'm going to hand this over to Quinn, who will discuss Oklahoma. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. That was really great to hear the other perspective. And I'm happy to talk today about what the Oklahoma House is doing for public input and public engagement. To start, I'm going to start sharing my screen really quick. And I hope everybody is able to see it. But I'm Quinn Doe. I'm the redistricting coordinator for the House.
Hey, we're not seeing the screen share.
Okay. Okay, is that better?
Perfect.
Okay, thank you, Orlando. Again, I'm Quinn Doe. I'm the redistricting coordinator for the House. I'm going to talk about the House's policy for public input and public engagement. And to do that, I need to talk about how every single member of the House of Representatives here in Oklahoma is named to the redistricting committee. Our Speaker Charles McCall, really wanted a inclusive, transparent process that really emphasizes the public's involvement in this process. And so he split up the state into 8 regional subcommittees. And the first thing was, it's easy to have a coordinated strategy for public engagement because of the way that it's been split up. So the chairs were tasked with picking a location to host the town hall. And once that was decided, the members of the subcommittee, they all went out and got the word out about where the meeting is. And I'll show you examples of both social media posts and newspaper clippings and other methods that our members have been using to get the word out about these town halls. And I'm going to talk about our public engagement strategy because when I first thought about this, I had reached out to NCSL and asked their experts to tell me or kind of survey the states on what they were doing. And together, between what was done in the past and what I think would be a process that involves all voices, whether it's digital, print, old, someone that's not familiar with technology, or someone who is very familiar with technology, we try to cover all those bases. So the first thing that you could do is a dedicated email for public input. Ours is Redistrict Oklahoma 2020 at okhouse.gov. The Senate, my Senate counterpart, Keith, he's on the call right now as well. They have one for the Senate as well. We launched that in September of 2019. So we've been taking public feedback for over a year now. That's easy, that's cheap. It's really a good way to be responsive immediately to anyone who has questions. The next thing is a redistricting website. Like Fred mentioned, a one-stop shop for House redistricting information where we talk about, where we have all the resources on there, where we have information about the process, information about where the town halls are, and information like GIS and interactive maps of the latest data, what our guidelines are going to be. We post them all on there. So the redistricting website for the House, it launched in October of 2020. We put our guidelines from the last 30 decades on there. We have current maps of the current redistricting plan for both the House and the congressional plan. We've got a lot of GIS resources, which I'll talk about later as well. The redistricting website is going to take a little bit more of thought, and you're going to have to involve your IT department. So not as easy as just a dedicated email for public input, but it's important to have a place where the public can go to find all of that information under one roof. The next thing is our regional town halls. So we are doing 18 in-person town halls across the state in coordination with the Senate. The House is doing 9, the Senate is doing 9. And then Keith and I hosted, or will be hosting 2 all virtual ones too. And those have been successful, and we'll talk about who's attended and what they have asked us there as well. And it was really important that we did this peppered around the state. So between the House and Senate, there are no locations that are doubled up so that we could cover more areas of the state, except for Oklahoma City and Tulsa, which are our two major metro areas. All of our town halls, just like any legislative committee proceeding, they are recorded, and for the most part, some of them are live streamed when it's possible. When we go into the rural areas, it's a little bit harder to guarantee the live stream, but we do record them and then we post them on our website for anybody to watch at a later date. We have a lot of GIS and interactive maps that are on the House Redistricting website as well, and we load it with the latest census data. So right now we've got the newest release from the 2019 ACS data on there. It's down to the block group level. And so the public can kind of gauge where their districts are trending in terms of population change. We have some demographic, racial, and ethnic data that is embedded into those interactive maps. So you can put on all of the different layers, and I'll show you an example of what that looks like as well. In Oklahoma, for the Oklahoma House and the Senate as well, public maps are going to be accepted this time. And the only thing is that we ask that a statewide map be drawn, and we will have we will set an opportunity for the public to come present those maps to the committee as well. Okay, so earlier I said every member of the House is a member of a subcommittee for redistricting. So this is just an example of tweets, Facebook page posts that our members have posted to kind of get the word out about the town halls. These are members from both sides of the aisle, and if I had the time, there are so many of these tweets, Facebook posts, press releases that have been generated. I think I did a search. I'll show you on the next page. On the right of the screen here are columns that our members have written and their local newspapers regarding the upcoming town halls. I think I did a search and I saw that just in 1 month, between November 30th and December 30th, we had 29 different publications, local publications, talk about the upcoming town halls. And so here are some statistics about the attendance, who attends, and the commonly asked questions that we've received. So state legislators are definitely there. And so the public, interested public members or civic group leaders or the city and county officials, they can come and talk with their state legislators about what they think the new districts lines should look like, what makes the most sense for their area. The commonly asked questions are transparency, political fairness. A lot of people are being educated about the process, and we talk about the timeline. There are questions about the census procedures, how other boundaries are drawn, not just legislative and congressional, but precinct lines are redrawn, county commissioner districts are redrawn, municipal wards can be redrawn, among others. People certainly ask about population trends and talk about their preference for county or city splits, whether a district should remain rural, or they believe that there should be a suburban urban leaning for a district. We hear all of that. And as I said, specific district concerns are also mentioned. And then finally, our record keeping method is that, as I said, they're all live streamed when possible, but you can rewatch them at any time on the House website. The way that I plan on organizing and sharing this public testimony to our committee members is that if you send an email to Redistrict Oklahoma 2020, or if you had public testimony at the town halls, or if you write a comment through our website, that's all summarized in a report and sent to the committee. If there's a specific district concern, we group them by those subcommittee regions that I talked about earlier. And then here's just an example of some of the resources that we have on our website. Fred was talking about GIS stuff, interactive maps, data. So if you look on the top, on the bottom, we've got just one shot of the different types of tools we've got. So if you wanted to see what your House district looked like after the 1990 census, after it was redistricting, we've got that on there through a 1990 shapefile, same for 2000, same for 2010. If you want to look at the demographics of your legislative district, that's available. We've got a layer list. So if you want to compare how the district, if it crosses with other city boundaries, if it is within your county commissioner district, within your city council ward district, those are all things that you can compare on there. And that's all of these tools are provided and done by our great GIS coordinator, Tricia Hines. And we've also got a team of GIS analysts with us. For your, the person who's going to do public map submissions, if you would like to have a starting point, we have the shapefile and the block equivalency file for the House and this congressional plan, the current ones available for you to download on our website as well. And finally, this is the final slide that is in all of our town hall presentations. We always put that there, and we try to address questions as they come. And with that, I'm gonna hand it off to Keith to talk about any other issues he's seen or questions regarding the town halls.
Am I on, Orlando?
Yes, you are.
Yes, okay. All right, well, good. It gets confusing. I can't see myself, so I just talk, I guess. I'm not going to repeat a bunch of stuff that Quinn said, but this Oklahoma State Senate is basically doing the same exact thing that the House is doing with emails and websites and things like that. I think what I'll talk about is some of the challenges that we've had because of COVID. And I realize that not everyone's going to be able to do in person because of either local rules or regulations. But for those of you that can do those, not all the sites would take us. We'd have to call around. Each site is a little different. Some require temperature checks to get in. Some require us to sign in case they want to do some contact tracing if needed afterwards. All of our sites are going to require masks, and all of our sites have social distancing. So I'm going to try and show a quick picture just so you can kind of get a sense of those. This is an example from the other night. This is actually when I went into the House. You can see the seats are spread out and separated. And then this is very similar to what we've had in a lot of them. You can see the seats, they're not letting you sit there. So we're kind of socially distanced throughout through the whole thing. So that's pretty much a standard wherever we go for each locations. Quinn barely reached on that, and I'm looking at our time here, so we can probably get to questions. But for those of you that can't do the in-person, Quinn and I did the virtual, and we've got another virtual set up. It worked great. So just working with our IT departments, we were able to do that. So virtual is definitely an easy option that any state could do pretty quickly. Also, the emails have been really good. Mine redistricting at oksenate.gov. I get 2 or 3 and then 2 or 3. So they kind of come in spurts. They're easy to respond to. Depending on where our town halls go, if I had a question from that area, I go ahead and ask that question at the town hall for that area, even if it was someone who had submitted it earlier. During the town halls, we also ask people to go ahead and submit questions during the town hall if they're not there, if they're watching virtually or at home on the website. And if, depending on where we're at, we try to answer those questions in person. And the last thing is the websites. Those are very good information tools for all of us. The Senate has a website just like the House, and it's all the basic information that you're going to need to get information out there to people in this environment that we're in with COVID and the ability for people to congregate, because you have to be under the just have to know that some people aren't comfortable coming out to the town halls. So because of that, you have to give them an option to be able to communicate their concerns or just ask a question or comments. And the last thing I want to mention is, and Fred mentioned that, and Quinn mentioned that, if you haven't started thinking about how you want to do your map submission process, you need to begin that now. That's one of the things with this potential census delay that, going to give you more time to be prepared for that. How are you going to handle that? What format are you going to accept them in? What rules, guidelines are you going to do? So this gives all of us all across the country a good time to get your map submission process down, and gives us all more time to do these virtuals, town halls. And hopefully the time will come where we can just do a town hall wherever we want and not have to worry about any rules or regulations. So with that, Ben, I'll turn it over to you. And I'll just mention real fast, our next virtual town hall is January 25th. So anybody who wants to come watch us on January 25th, you can do that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ben or Wendy, and we'll go to questions.
Great. Thank you, Keith. And thank you, Quinn and Fred, as well. That was really informative. And I think that this is something that a lot of people are thinking about, because we got a lot of questions in the chat right now. We're up to 10 and they've been coming in quick. So I'll get started with the one that has the most upvotes right now. And I'm going to direct it to all of you because I think that it has multiple components. So it's, what are the best practices that you would recommend for ensuring that public input in the redistricting process is meaningful, and especially in a virtual manner to keep people safe during COVID? And I think this is something that a lot of people are wrestling with. Is it's already difficult enough to ensure that the public input that is being given has some applicability or is discernible in a particular context, so that the legislators or commissioners who are responsible for doing redistricting can understand how to use it. And so I'm going to throw it first to you, Keith and Quinn. We can go in that order and just ask, what are the things that you've noticed having done these already that have facilitated better public comments than others? And then Fred, I'm going to throw it to you as well. I'm interested to know if there have been discussions or resources that have been produced by community organizations to help focus and sharpen the public comments so that they are of a sufficient, I'm not going to say quality because I think all public feedback is worthwhile, but are of a sufficient form so that redistrictors can actually pick them up and use them. So Keith, we'll start with you.
I think one of the things on the question, and I might be a little off, is just trying to educate. Both Quinn's and my PowerPoints are similar, but they're different. It's part of this is education. So when you're talking to people who aren't involved in this every day, or they've never been involved in it, and you're talking to someone in a local community, it's just the basic education of the process, like how it's going to work. And I think that will enable them to ask better questions, whether it's a question about their community of interest or a question about, population trends in the state, demographic changes. So I think just basic education. And to me, I think the slideshow kind of presenting to the general public needs to be, at a level where they'll understand it and we don't lose them in the process, so they can understand it better. So just educating the public better.
I'll add to that question a little bit. I think just being responsive in all the communication channels that you can. One thing that I've noticed that I think helps foster more public input at the town halls is seeing your state representatives there in the meeting as well, and being able to hear a response from them. So our town halls, we've seen pretty good turnout from the representatives in our region. And the other thing is we set up a standing mic in the middle of the room for people to approach and ask questions. And that puts people on the spot a little bit because it's being recorded. So, We don't get a lot of questions on the camera, but we always stick around afterwards and have conversations, look at the maps together. I bring multiple maps to the town halls, district profiles. I have a little, Trisha has made a graphic showing the district shape and size over time. So that just helps people think about those changes a little bit more. So just having, sticking around, being able to answer questions, having access to the legislators who actually represent them, I think that helps foster better public input in the process.
Yeah, Ben, one thing I've noticed that doing the town halls is people don't want to get up and make a comment. So you almost answer as many questions after the event than you do during the event, because people, there's gun shy about getting up in front of people to speak. So just like Quinn said, just making yourselves accessible. And I think that's also the emails, like we mentioned about, just people can just, type in an email and send it to you and they can get an answer right away.
And I'll weigh in here. For redistrictors and those drawing, one of the most important components and what's coming from these public virtual meetings that all of these places that I work in are having is defining your community. You will hear at whatever type of town hall you have, when you do hear from the public, they are going to tell you about their community. But now, aside from it just being a verbal conversation, I mentioned some open source mapping programs. In Districtor, one of those that I did mention, not only can you draw a statewide plan, you can also draw and upload your community. Using those blocks and those block groups, you can define your communities. We have a project with colleges and universities. And when I'm out speaking about redistricting and in our project with colleges and universities, we've asked them, what is the college community here? Because honestly, it's not just the college campus, and many college campuses have a precinct. It's the area around the college campus. It's the community, it's the houses, it's the apartments, it's that area around that's part of and inclusive in that college campus. You can go on an open source site and you can draw that. You can draw that community and you can draw several communities. You know where the agricultural community is. You know where the technology community is. You know where a bunch of college professors live, where teachers live. You know this. You can define them. And that's what they're going to come and stand before you if they're able, or be on a virtual call and chat in and say, this is my community. And now when they can do this physically at a town hall, they can come and show you their community. And they want to be together. They don't want it to be split. And let me end on this note. In increasing participation, show that you're interested in them. Show that you care about their concerns. I will be honest and tell you, no one wants a form letter. Thank you for your interest in redistricting. We'll take it under advisement. But I also know that you can't answer hundreds of thousands of questions. So maybe it's going to be interesting to discuss how can we substantively and more effectively deal with some of the questions that aren't just generalized and someone gets a response and said they didn't even read my concern. I think if you show you're interested some kind of way, that'll increase participation.
Great, thank you to all of you. And just a note for the audience, Fred mentioned the free web app Districtor. Districtor was developed in part by Dr. Munduchin, who was a faculty member on this seminar yesterday. So if you have any questions about that platform, I would recommend reaching out to her and the software developers that she worked with on that. She can talk to you a little bit more about how that works and the use cases for which she thinks it's most valuable. So I'm going to move on to another one, and I'm going to supplement what Trish has asked. So Trish is asking, what platform, Keith and Quinn, did you use for your virtual town hall, And how did you decide to use that platform over other options that you had?
Sure, I can take that. It was easy because we had been using Microsoft Teams for at least a year or two now. So during the interim studies, our members can tune in virtually and ask questions virtually. So we were familiar with Microsoft Teams platform. So on the redistricting website, I created a page, and it just said, can't make it to one of the 18 town halls around the state. Please join us for the next virtual town hall. We'll answer your questions in real time. And they could just join through the link. Using Microsoft Teams, they didn't have to download the Teams platform. If they clicked just join by web browser, that helps a lot, because I think if you make it harder or they have to download multiple apps just to be able to participate, that that can turn some of the public members of the public who want to join off. And then, yeah, Microsoft Teams works greatly. We had people be able to unmute themselves and ask questions at the end. And then we also looked at the chat regularly, just kind of like we're doing right now, addressing questions as they go. And we generally stay on until the very last question is asked.
Ben, it worked out great. Like Quinn said, she had a link on the House site. We had the same link on the Senate website. We put it out on social media with the link. Press release had the link. So I mean, it went good. And we, like I said, you just have to work with your IT staff in your state, you know, to work what's going to work with you. But we did the screenshots and all, and Quinn's pulling up her screenshot right now.
Yeah, this is the page that I'm talking about right here. You know, we've got a picture of one of the town halls we did just a few weeks ago on there, but you joined by click on the link. It took you to the Teams platform, and that was easy enough. Yeah.
Great. And I can imagine that for a lot of states, obviously COVID-19 has created significant reductions in tax revenues. And so states are going to be looking for cost-effective ways to facilitate public engagement. And
that was free. It just took overtime from us for an hour or so.
Exactly. We use Microsoft Teams at NCSL all the time. If you are a state that already has a contract with Microsoft for Office products, which I presume most, if not all of you are, Teams is usually included as a component in that. So if you are not a state that uses it frequently, just ask your IT specialist to see what your availability is, because it has a lot of similar components to both Zoom and the free public platform called Slack. And the video component can be used for public meetings like this in a way that doesn't require a new line item in the budget. So moving on, there are quite a few questions. I'm trying to keep them on the same topic. I don't want to jump back and forth. So there was one more about these meetings, and there's a couple of questions similar to this. So I'm going to combine a few. Mary in Kansas is asking, what is the most useful type of input for legislators drawing districts? Is it a full map, or is it the granular identification of communities of interest? And Quinn, I'll give it to you first, and then Keith.
Sure. In my opinion, so we had a town hall in Oklahoma City, and we heard from the mayor and some people with the Chamber of Commerce there. And they said, we think the splitting up of small towns is hard for our representation. And they identified which districts split those small towns. That's very helpful, because that immediately translate into something that we can solve in the next plan. In other town halls, we hear the same thing: keep counties whole, keep rural districts rural, keep urban districts urban, keep this community together. So the more specific that you can be about your specific district preference, in my opinion, that's the best type of constructive feedback for legislators. Keith, Fred, yeah.
And I think, I mean, that pretty much sums it up. I mean, every community little different, but the number one thing that comes up is people have an opinion on their local community, what it should be like and what it shouldn't be like. So that's pretty much a consistent theme wherever we're at, whether it's urban or rural in Oklahoma. That's pretty much a consistent theme for the useful type of input that a legislator could hear. And I think it's good. We've had really good participation, like Quinn said, of the legislators at the town halls and on the virtual. They were on the virtual one also. So they're able to hear, they're not just getting what we say we heard, they're actually hearing it themselves. So I think that's really positive.
And there's a record keeping for them to review after the fact. There's the recordings available as well. So that helps.
Wonderful.
And I'll speak briefly. I agree with Keith and Quinn. I found in my experience over these cycles, everybody is more concerned about, and what's important for the legislator is that community in that particular district. Although I love when everyone draws a full statewide plan, but if you're in California, that's going to be interesting. You take that on your own. However, they want to know, people key into where they live whenever they look at a statewide plan. That's just what you do. So I think the most important and most relevant information is the communities within that particular area and that specific district. So I'm going to defer to communities more so than a full plan.
Great, thank you. So next question is from Senator Jim Bolin, and he is asking about timing. So I imagine when you're scheduling these in-person and virtual online public hearings, you're thinking about what times will people actually be available, because a lot of folks are at work during some of the times when you could schedule them. So do you have a recommendation on having public hearings, for example, in the evening so that more people can come? And how do you resolve timing concerns?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go ahead, Keith.
All of ours, except for one, were in the evening. We had one here at the Capitol that was in the afternoon. Part of what's driving the evening also is most of our facilities are some form of a school facility, either a career tech or an actual school. And because of the environment we're in, they don't want us to be around when the students are around. So that's kind of driving it too. But all of ours are in the evening, and I think that's probably the best for local community involvement.
Yeah.
And our virtual town halls in the evening too.
I agree. We do all of ours in the evening, 5:30, 6 or 7 p.m. And, you know, the House has been doing town halls for 30 years now. So we've had town halls. I looked at the previous schedules and I could tell that there was a concentrated effort to make sure in the evening when people are off work, they can attend.
And I'm going to agree. A great deal of my work has been in the South. They've always been in the evening hours. And I'll be very honest, when some more local ones occurred in the afternoon, and the public tends to think something nefarious is going on because a lot of people are at work. So I'm going to always say the evening.
Great, thank you. I'm going to shift over a little bit. We have a couple of questions from Rick and Matt, which are related to one another. So let's ask Rick's first, and then we'll go to Matt's. So Rick asks, since the general public does not have access to mapping software, how would you suggest that the public and civic groups present maps in town halls or meetings? And I know, Quinn, you've already mentioned that you've published online the block equivalency files and the shape files for existing districts. Do you do that for precincts as well to help facilitate this, or are you letting people go to these free sources that already have this info uploaded for their drawing and comment?
Sure, I can address that. So on our website, and I can pull it up right here, we've got some GIS resources that we link to. We've got, in Oklahoma, there's the Center for Spatial Analysis. They have a data warehouse, and that's the central repository for shape files. So the public, if they just go there, they can download the shape files for precincts, county commissioner districts. others. They can look at precinct maps by counties. So it's not hard, but our interactive tools, those layers are also already on there as well. So if you are not familiar with the technical side, there is a tool for you to be able to access it easier. And then I'd love for Fred to talk more about those third-party open platform software apps, because that's what we will be deferring the public to draw those submission apps. Yes.
And thank you, Quinn, because what I want to point out is, yes, you do have access to it. You don't have the same program that I have, but you can go to Districtor, you can go to Dave's Redistricting, and there are tons of others. They have the maps. You upload it. You'll probably have to draw using precincts or block groups. At least that's the way it stands right now. But you do have it. Then switch over to the Redistricting Data Hub and get a whole bunch of other data. And that data is now being worked on, and it's being in a platform where you can upload it to other maps and some places like Oklahoma. And I remember the first state I ever publicly did it was on Florida's public website. And they were encouraging people to do it. So that's what makes it so unique. And that is what's driving this large amount of public participation. You do have access. Now, my plan is going to be a bit more detailed because I've got this expensive program, but you've got enough to draw a plan and go to the hearing or mail the plan or electronically send it. And I love what Oklahoma is doing. It would be so easy to draw there because you put everything there. You got the blocks, I can download them, I can do this. But if you are in a state that does not have this, I encourage you to look at these sites and go in there and play with any state you want. It is out there. It is out there.
Ben, I think this goes back to what I said earlier. It's about kind of educating the public. You could, I tell people just go to Google, type in free redistricting software, and Redistricting Hub comes up, Dave's comes up, they all come up. So the information's out there for people to have. We as a group, all of us, all 50 states and private nonprofit groups, NCSL, we have to do a better job of letting the public know that this data is out there for them to go get, and then they can draw a map and then submit it back to the states.
Great. I'm going to ask one question for Matt and then one final one to wrap up. Since we started a couple minutes late, we'll run a couple minutes over. So Matt Gehring, who's out of Minnesota, is asking, can you speak in more detail, and I think this is mostly to you, Keith and Quinn, about what happens when a map is submitted by a member of the public? Are they analyzed or consolidated in any particular way?
Sure, I can talk about that. I think, we're going to ask that it be in an electronic format that can be accepted into our software. So everybody who would do so on one of those free platforms, they would know how to download it as a block equivalency file. And when we import that in, we can pull those reports, those professional reports about population deviation, compactness, splitting up of counties and cities, how that works. But the first step is probably to ask that the public explain what's important in their plan. And then to help our committee, we're happy to pull those reports so that they have a little bit more information about the statistics of the plan or the components of the plan. Yeah.
Ben, one of the other things I like to remind people at the town halls is, redistricting is just like any other bill. So they can still communicate with their local elected official. They don't have to depend on Quinn or me or the redistricting office. I think sometimes people forget that they can still communicate with their local elected officials that they've elected to represent them at the Capitol on a bill, just like any other bill. They can still do that on redistricting. I also want to point out that you can submit a map now, but to minimize everything, we're waiting until the official final census data comes out, at least here in Oklahoma, where people then can start submitting their official maps. But that's not stopping people from submitting plans now where they go to Dave's and draw a map and say, here's my idea. But not until we get the official data will we start accepting official submitted maps.
Sure. And that feeds right into the final question I wanted to conclude with was, I think when most states, including y'all in Oklahoma, were originally thinking about how to set this up, we were imagining that PL data, we thought we'd have reapportionment data by now, and we thought that the PL data would be coming out by the end of March. And so it doesn't look like that's going to happen yet. Obviously, I'm at NCSL, I don't have like any, I'm not flying the wall inside the Census Bureau, but I think it's safe to assume at this point that it's not going to be coming out on time. So what kinds of input in terms of these communities of interest drawing and maps are most useful before we get the new population numbers? Because obviously if people are drawing maps, there may be estimates from 2018 or 2019 that could be available on some of these free apps with more up-to-date numbers, but it's not going to be the official enumeration. So what can the public do now that is most useful to legislators who are drawing lines? Is it just the community focus solely, or is there some value in providing something maybe that's more descriptive, since you can't do the full statewide and using identical data to the actual redistricting data? I'll throw it to you first, Quinn.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Ben. I would say specific local preferences. That is the most helpful right now. And especially in areas where there is a lot of population loss, just being aware of the population trends and how that can, understanding that one person, one vote, that the population equality component is going to be driving a lot of the district lines, the new district lines. Keith, anything?
I think one of the good things about at least getting this information out to the public now is, even though it is 2019 estimate data or 18 estimate data, depending on what map we use, they are trends that we all know, wherever you live. So for like in Oklahoma, everyone knows that Oklahoma City's had a lot of growth and the rural areas have been losing population. So it's one thing to say it, but it's another thing for them to be educated and see it on a map and see that this district's going to be estimated to be short this much. And this in the urban area, this district's going to be over this much. And I think it goes back to, like Fred said, it's just getting the community engaged, community engagement, and educating the community of what's going to be happening when we finally do get the census numbers.
And I'll tag on, just adding to Keith and Quinn, certainly defining your communities, I think, is the most important thing you can do now before we get this, these redistricting files and the subsequent data. Defining that community and what has been the issues in that particular local area, in that community. These voters, these citizens are going to come with their concerns as those concerns relate to redistricting, not just anything, but just a quick example. In talking to a community in Greensboro, North Carolina, they did not appreciate a district line drawn that split a college campus at North Carolina A&T. And they will express that in their future hearings. So whatever is going on locally that relates to redistricting, because you hear about a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with redistricting, but whatever relates to redistricting, find out what their concern is. And you can do that now. You don't have to wait for redistricting data.
Yeah, I agree with that. The community hasn't changed, or yeah.
Fantastic. Well, we're already quite over, so we can just wind up now. But Keith, Quinn, Fred, thank you so much for being here. This has been helpful. And in the States, if you are thinking about setting up something, we would love to hear what your plans are. So please reach out to us at elections-info@ncsl.org, because this is one of the most common questions we get are, what are other states doing? Quinn mentioned that she herself has asked us this question. And unfortunately at that time, we didn't have a lot to share. So as you settle on your plans, let us know and we'll start compiling those so that we can have a list for all the legislators and legislative staffers on here to refer to as we move forward over the coming months. And our next session, I believe, is courts policy and the future of redistricting. I highly encourage all of you to go over there. We have some excellent speakers from the Brennan Center and the Cato Institute and from some law schools to talk about the trends that they're watching for over the coming decade. So with that, thank you everyone, and I hope that you have a wonderful Friday.